Thank you, Honourable Member. As many. The Chair recognizes the Honourable Member for St. Barnabas.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker. It's a lot to talk about today. That does not mean that it's not important stuff, Pinewood, because relevance is all relative. And the Bahamian people have a number of concerns, not just about what we are debating here today, but issues that continue to impact their everyday life. But as I rise, Mr. Deputy, I give thanks to Almighty God for allowing me to be here today and to wake up this morning in what I will always say is the greatest country in the world, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, the question of relevance always comes up in our debates. And I have noticed consistently, Mr. Deputy, that whether in this debate or previous debates, members opposite have foregone that adherence to relevance to bring to light some issues that they feel are vitally important to their government and the communication to the Bahamian people, sometimes making sure to provide the contrast, or simply put, the case of why they should be reelected, Mr. Deputy. And so, in turn, Mr. Deputy, the opposition has an obligation, has a duty, I would say, as a part of our democracy, to make sure that this conversation and that conversation has in it our contribution of what we feel the government is saying, or their perception of what is happening in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Mr. Deputy. But, Mr. Deputy, I rise on behalf of the great people of St. Barnabas. And this debate today, Mr. Deputy, is, like other debates, significant. But I'm sure for... You'll need to take that VAT off of bread basket items. But, Mr. Deputy, this debate in many ways, in my view, cuts to the very heart of what it is that we all have come here to do, aspired to be in Bahamian politics, and as what we've come here to do, Mr. Deputy, as we've engaged in the larger discussion, understandably, of the impact of these compendium of bills on our artisans, on our singers, our songwriters, our photographers, many other persons in all aspects of the visual arts of our country, because this is about protecting who we are and ensuring who we are is not only protected, but that we develop and strengthen, I should say, a framework that not only protects the interests of our people and our culture and the soul of who we are, but how do we in turn ensure the exportation of who we are as Bahamians in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas? Because the uniqueness of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, I always say, Mr. Deputy, the Bahamas is an incubator for purpose and talent and some of the most gifted and intellectual people in the world, Mr. Deputy. And I say that without any reservation. You go around the world, And wherever a Bahamian or Bahamians are, they are making a tremendous impact in a transformational way wherever they are in other countries. And yes, that is why, as much as possible, we want to slow down the brain drain, if you will, and encourage our people to come back home and continue to build our country. I know for me, Mr. Deputy, when I was a senior in university and I called my classmates from SAC who were at other universities in the United States, and actually the joke was, and that I accepted it, really accepted it, was, well, we know you going back home because, you always been into this thing about politics. And can't fault any man or woman for deciding their own destiny. But the development of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Mr. Deputy, as much as it is about the economy and all of the other pertinent aspects of Bahamian life, what we are discussing today in this larger discussion about culture and who we are, it is fundamental to our existence, Mr. Deputy. And when I say fundamental to our existence, we've talked about the absolute advantages that we have in our sun, sand, and sea, and our proximity to the United States. But those, as much as they are absolute advantages, those aren't the things that distinguish us from the world. Because there are other places that have sun, sand, and sea. Maybe not the proximity. The point is, the Bahamian people and the Bahamian culture and Bahamians, what it is about the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and Bahamians that distinguishes us from the rest of the world in every aspect that you could possibly name, Mr. Deputy. And these compendium of bills, and I'm talking about the spirit of the bills, which I think is vitally important as much as the written principles of the bills and the way it's laid out. I think the spirit of the bills, Mr. Deputy, is what we should really be focusing on and allows us to dictate many aspects of what we do in the development of our people, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, at the St. Barnabas Community Center, for those of you who have driven past Market Street just before you get to Carter Avenue, you would see the St. Barnabas Community Center. And we were blessed to have the involvement of Alan Pacino Wallace, who's a local artist. And he did the murals for us on the community center. And when we sat down, he said, well, Mr. Cartwright, what is your vision for this mural? I said, listen, I want to be sure to promote some cultural icons in our country, so that, yes, the people of St. Barnabas, as they walk by and drive by, can have a reminder, a daily visual reminder of the greatness within us, but also persons who would be connected to St. Barnabas, in particular Coconut Grove. So you will see on that mural Edmund Moxie, Maureen Devalier, Joseph Spence, Amos Ferguson. Icons, cultural icons, Mr. Deputy, because again, culture is the soul of a nation. And when you don't have a soul or lose your soul, you know you have some serious, serious problems, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, the member for Angliston touched on an issue that I agree with a slight modification. But the member for Angliston talked about the this thing about the water park coming at the port. Mr. Deputy, anybody who has a business they are entitled to formulate their marketing and what it is they want their business to be. But I do believe that when we talk about the tourism product is just not sun, sand, and sea. The tourism product is who we are. And this has always been, in my view, and my 20-plus something years in the hospitality industry, even senior management and marketing. How do we simultaneously embrace foreign direct investment, make an attractive tourism product in many aspects? You want the jobs, but how do we maintain our cultural identity, and how does that discussion and that thought manifest itself in our negotiations with these persons who want to invest in our country? How do we maintain the things that, for example, well, you know, I heard a lot of dates today, like 1971. As they say, I wasn't a gleam in my father's eye in 1971 because I was born in 1976. But you would hear about the stories about the Cat and Fiddle, the Silver Slipper, and the world-renowned artists who would come to the Bahamas, Nat King Cole and so forth, and so many others. How do we, and I believe that this is an opportunity as we have this discussion today, how do we recapture that part of Bahamian life? That part of Bahamian life, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, the tourist, the visitor that comes to the Bahamas for the first time, in my experience, they come in for the most part, let's say the proximity or the sun, sand, and sea. But you know what encourages that guest to come back a second time? Is the Bahamian experience that they experience when they hear the first time. That experience, that exchange with the Bahamian, that Bahamian culture, the thing that distinguishes us, Mr. Deputy, the thing that distinguishes us from the rest of the world, Mr. Deputy. You know, our food, our singing, you know, our music, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, and this is not a political statement. This is not a political statement, Mr. Deputy. But it's taking us 40-plus years or more to redevelop downtown. That's not a political statement. The point I'm making is, as a Bahamian, even as the port, as they market their product, and now talking about a water park, which they feel will help their business, right? What are we doing to make sure that there's a Bay Street experience, that there's a Nassau experience, that when it flashes up on the screen in one of our commercials, just like when you see the Opera House in the Australian Harbour, you know that that's Australia. What are we doing to ensure that the experience here on Bay Street and in Nassau is such that when it flies up on the screen, a visitor who's been here before can say, oh man, that's Nassau. Or the person who has not been here before, even before they hear the name, where's that, Mr. Deputy? So these bills, Mr. Deputy, as we strengthen the framework to make sure that our artists, our entertainers, and everybody in the orange economy, Mr. Deputy, empowering them, we have to make sure, Mr. Deputy, that we do other things to ensure that our culture lives in a way that the guests, once they leave here, or someone, anybody, once they leave here, they're leaving here with such an experience that they talk about the Bahamian experience, because my concern is, Mr. Deputy, and I've said this before, my concern is the guest that comes to Bahama, the guest that comes to Atlantis, and now even the guest that visits the port, who may not leave that area over there. Okay? Are they coming to the Bahamas? Are we ensuring, this is the question, are we ensuring that they are coming to the Bahamas, they're coming for the Atlantis experience, and then they get the Bahamas? Or they come in for the Bahamian experience, and they plan to stay at Atlantis? So the question is, what are we doing to drive up that the Bahamian experience, not the Atlantis experience, which they're entitled to market for, but they come in for the Bahamian experience, or getting both. So we go into the Atlantis for the largest open-air marine habitat in the world, which Atlantis is. We come in for that. But you know something? We're getting off this property because we want to experience what it is to visit the Bahamas. Many times I could remember talking with guests. And granted, you have obviously all different categories of guests. And though sometimes, you know, there's an unspoken rule, sort of, the properties, they want you to suggest restaurants at the hotel property, right? That's what they want you to do. But I would always say, you know, listen, you know, if you just go over the bridge, taxi can take you there. There's a place called Fish Fry. Want some good Bahamian food, you know? And they'll say, well, hey, aren't there restaurants around on the property that sells Bahamian food? They say, no, man, you want an authentic Bahamian experience. So go down to Fish Fry. Again, I'm not faulting these properties for what they do. They make a tremendous investment in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and the economic impact is obvious. But they're concerned about their business, yes, that impacts the country. But we have to be fully engaged in the business of what it is, what is the Bahamian experience, what are people experiencing when they leave here. And that experience, the first time where they say, gotta come back. Even for the cruise ship passenger, who we want to make a stopover visitor, what encourages them to become a stopover visitor is the experience where they say, you know what, we're here on a cruise, but we had such a good time with the Bahamian experience, we have to come here for a longer vacation, be here for a week, and that has happened. I'm not suggesting that that has not happened. But we need to increase that, and what I am saying is that that cultural experience is what will continue to make the difference for us, Mr. Deputy. And Mr. Deputy, I remember I was born in 1976, but you know, I could remember because we were living out in Mount Pleasant at the time. So, you know, you'd always take we used to call it, take the long ride from uptown to go to Mount Pleasant. And so I always remembered passing, for example, Compass Point. And even as a young boy, you knew that that was a record studio, and you heard about stories about what was happening there, Mr. Deputy. And this article here says, when Nassau, Bahamas was the center of the music world, just talking about what existed here in Nassau, at the studios out there, and what Mr. Blackwell and many others would have created at that time, and what Nassau was, and what Nassau can be again, Mr. Deputy, because we have the talent here, Mr. Deputy. And it says here, between roughly 1977 and 1987, Compass Point, founded by legendary producer Chris Blackwell, was arguably the center of the music world, Mr. Deputy. The center of the music world. We can do it again. We have the ability. The Caribbean Gateway, where the 80s were recorded. Talking about Nassau, Mr. Deputy. This isn't something that we have to be just nostalgic about. This is something that we can create again, Mr. Deputy. As I said before, Mr. Deputy, yes, come for our sun, sand, and sea, but come for our music, come for our food, come for our research. Come for our research, Mr. Deputy. This isn't just about, though it's important, it ain't just about entertaining you. You can come here and find and be a part of serious research, our intellect. All aspects of what it is to be Bahamian, Mr. Deputy. I see here, Mr. Deputy, was doing some research. The Smithsonian Folkway Recordings is a non-profit record label of the Smithsonian Institution, the National Museum of the United States. And they talk about the islands of song, music of the Bahamas. The Smithsonian, recognizing the contribution of music in the Bahamas, and just gives real details about Gombe music with rake and scrape, sacred music, story songs, sacred music. Bahamian sacred music is one of the island's most outstanding artistic expressions. Guitar masters, they say, in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. The Bahamas boast some of the best guitarists in the world, many of whom are self-taught on homemade guitars. They can be found singing their own tunes in the local island bar or accompanying social dances and events. Joseph Spence is probably the most well-known Bahamian guitarist. His improvisational finger-picking style drew from folk and jazz influences and typified the rhythmically relaxed Bahamian guitar sound. His distinctive style was widely admired and copied by many up-and-coming American and British folk guitarists. Mr. Deputy, this is who we are. This is who we are, Mr. Deputy. And while, Mr. Deputy, I don't believe that anybody in here intends to sell us short, I believe that we all could focus in everything we do, focus on strengthening the culture of our country, Mr. Deputy. I mean, really, really strengthen it in a way that would reap dividends, not only economic dividends, but more fundamentally, so our people can fully appreciate our greatness and who we are, even further. Not that we don't appreciate it, Mr. Deputy. I saw this article as well, Mr. Deputy. Musicians discuss their plight in the music industry in the Bahamas, and talked about how Bahamian music spiked in the 70s. Veteran music singer, mentor, and teacher Duke Errol Strawn recalls the era when Bahamian music scene was booming, the Zanzibar, Silver Slipper, the Cat and Fiddle, and talks about Bahamians and foreigners alike could choose their pick. And interestingly, he said, however, all of that began to change in the 90s. Strawn believes that politics had much to do with entertainers' success and decline, stating that the last nightclub to have anything to do with tourism was the King and Knights Club, which eventually closed down due to cruise ships. So again, just highlighting, Mr. Deputy, the balance that ought to be embraced as we redefine, streamline, and enhance our tourism product, Mr. Deputy. Because as much as the jobs are important, obviously, as much as the jobs are important, the question is, what are we sacrificing for those jobs in terms of culture and who we are as a people? How will the Commonwealth of the Bahamas look like 30 years from now as we continue to develop our country? It's almost analogous, Mr. Deputy, to infrastructure, and even the widening of roads, for example. In widening a road, we have a lot of historic buildings. So in widening a road to accommodate a growing population, we have to make some hard decisions about, okay, for infrastructural development, we have to widen this road to ensure efficiency on the roads. But we got a couple of historic buildings. So I'm not suggesting it is easy, but these are the challenges that we have to face as we develop and decide how do we preserve, through antiquities and monuments, how do we preserve those things that make us centrally, Mr. Deputy, who we are. You know, members here obviously see the presence of Ray Munnings, and there's been talk, and the member for Fox Hill made a wonderful contribution, I feel, about Funky Nassau. And, you know, interestingly, and I'm not a musician, so I'm sure I could be forgiven in my assessment of this. You know, the musical arrangement of Funky Nassau, and when I say musical arrangement, the sound, obviously that's one part of it. But even when you listen to the words, and you know, Brother Ray, you know, the line where it's, we got our doggone beat now, we call our very own. That embodies what, as far as I'm concerned, what we're talking about culture, you know? You know, this us, we got our own thing, not only for us to enjoy, but something that we are going to export to the world, Mr. Deputy. So, Mr. Deputy, I know that I've spoken a lot about this aspect of culture and what this will do for those that participate in the orange economy. Obviously, the leader of the opposition is well known and prolific for his mastery in a lot of aspects of culture and the orange economy. So I frankly do look forward to his contribution. And as much as the side opposite will, you know, crack their little jokes about the member who is a prolific writer, a prolific poet. Oh, it's not a joke? No. Okay, all right. Mr. Deputy, so Mr. Deputy, it is vitally important that we continue to summon from within the things that will allow our culture, our people, our artisans, our painters, everybody, the ability to show the world and continue to show, let the world mark the manner of our bearing in so many ways, Mr. Deputy. Let us be more than sun, sand, and sea, Mr. Deputy, which we are, because what COVID showed us, Mr. Deputy, you know, that when the planes and the cruise ship stops, as important as they are, and nobody is suggesting that they will never be a part of the tourism model, but when the planes and the ships stop, what are we depending on, Mr. Deputy? Mr. Deputy, as I close, I talked about a number of issues that are on the minds of the Bahamian people, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, last night, our country recorded 65 murders in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. That's on the heel of the 64th murder, which was the unfortunate incident on Nassau Street, where one person was killed. 65 murders in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We have consistently said that crime is not a political issue. But putting that aside, the government has a responsibility to respond in an adequate way and with a sense of urgency that the Bahamian people feel that they have not, Mr. Deputy. 65 murders in 7 months, 9 murders every month, Mr. Deputy, since the year started. So we feel that in that regard, the government is failing the Bahamian people. The Bahamian people feel that, Mr. Deputy. They feel that the government can do more. We are willing to be a part of that conversation. But as we assemble here today, Last night, 65 murders, Mr. Deputy. That cannot be acceptable to any of us, and it surely cannot be acceptable to the government, who has a responsibility to preserve the security and safety. The security and safety, Mr. Deputy. And as we've said, nobody's happy. And as the side opposite, Mr. Deputy, 2 more minutes, please. 2 minutes, Mr. Deputy. Two more minutes, Mr. Deputy. Thank you very much, right? And so, you know, I was making a very sincere, Mr. Deputy, sincere agitation on behalf of the Bahamian people. But the side opposite would want you to believe that, you know, you're bringing doom and gloom, Mr. Deputy, or you're being political. But nothing could be more political than billboards that have the murder count on it. So, if they want to have a sincere discussion, we can have a sincere discussion. But until you stand up and apologize for the billboards, until you stand up and apologize for the billboards with the murder count. So we don't want to hear that. No, that's not what it's about. No, we're making a fundamental. The government will talk about all of the other things that they've accomplished. You don't get to pick. So you talk about the tourism numbers, and it's fair for you, to talk about the tourism numbers, but you must also talk about the state of crime in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. All right? No, don't give me up at this time. You know what I mean? You're not the only people. You're not the only people who care about the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Mr. Deputy, Mr. Deputy. But yet, Mr. Deputy, instead of that, somebody get up and address the issue of crime in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, they prefer to stay on their seat and throw jabs from their seat. So we encourage the government to get up from their slumber and address the crime problem in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, Mr. Deputy. That's what the Bahamian people are saying, Mr. Deputy. And anything other than engaging on what we can do to fix it with a sense of urgency, that is playing politics. Yes. That is playing politics. Yes. Mr. Deputy, I thank you very, very much, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, thank you very much, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, also, Mr. Deputy, we're wrapping up right now. Wrapping up right now, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, just one last thing, Mr. Deputy. Just one last thing, Mr. Deputy.
You had a minute to wrap up.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, also talking about the policies that impact the Bahamian people, Mr. Deputy, right? Okay? Fares over air travel. Fares over travel. These fees going into Bimini, Mr. Deputy. The people in Bimini, and I would hope that the Member of Parliament for West Grand Bahama would stand up and talk for the people of Bimini. The people of Bimini, right here, fares over air travel. Talking about how this is burdening them, Mr. Deputy. How this is burdening them. People who have medical issues, and they're talking about the increased fees at the airport in Bimini. I am not the Member of Parliament for West Grand Bahama in Bimini, but I hope that he would stand up. I would stand up, Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy, the unions have said that this government has let them down.
Yeah, I know.
Right?
Yeah.
Say they're not honoring their agreements.
Okay, honorable member,
not honoring their agreements, Mr. Deputy.
The time is up for your contribution. Thank you very much. The chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Gates.
Does St. Barnabas have a document where the unions are saying this? Because I have many documents that say otherwise.
Okay.
So if so, he should share them. Because I'm not aware of any unions who I meet with very frequently.
All right, honorable members.
And no agreements that aren't being honored.
Okay, no, hold on. We're not going down that road right now. Let's stick to the bill that we're debating. Honorable member, no, hold on, no. I understand, but we're not going there right now. As many?
Mr. Deputy, if I may. Mr. Deputy.
As many?
The honorable member got a point of order, Mr. Deputy.
Yeah,
Please have the chance to reply.
No, I didn't give her a chance to finish.
No, Mr. Deputy, she already said.
No, I didn't give her.
Mr. Deputy. The honorable member, call upon a point.
Yeah, we're not going there today.
Don't go, Mr. Deputy.
Okay, the chair recognizes the honorable member for Marco City. We gotta.
Mr. Deputy.
You can get back in member statements on that.
Mr. Deputy. Mr. Deputy.
Yeah.
Government not honoring industrial agreement.
That's not from a union.
This is from the president of the TUC.
I ain't
The
entertaining
president of
them.
the TUC says that the government is not honoring the industrial agreements. That's what he said.
Yeah.
No.
Honorable members. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, I'm finished with that. You know, I'm pretty much done with that.
Mr. Deputy Speaker.
Do you all have a next member so we can start?
Where their friends in the newspapers have misrepresented an offering memorandum. That is why we asked for the source document. There will be, Mr. Deputy, after Marco City Marathon, and then I will wrap up.
Okay. As many?
They say y'all ain't honoring the agreement. They say y'all ain't honoring the agreement. That's what all these waiting to say. Y'all ain't